and Facebook added to this. X as well. All right, all right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for the likes. Thank you for 5.4K likes on TikTok. Thank you very much. Thanks for your support. I noticed a particular person who was tapping away was Koboko and Ben. Thank you so much for liking the live. The rest of us, let's like as well. It's a beautiful Thursday evening, and I hope you're having a great day. Ẹkáàbọ, Koboko. I'm going to respond to some of the things you have written in the comment section in a bit, but thanks for being here, everybody. Let's like the live, let's share as well. If you're on TikTok, please click on the heart icon above Mama's picture and join the team. Drop a heart me, drop a gift, just drop stuff that will help us push the live to the FYP. Again, we're going to be listening to Mama, so that means that I'm not going to be coming on camera. So that means we're going to even require us to please help power tap more than usual. Thank you very much. Adidakwa Ademo, I'm going to say sorry to pop in response to a guy who claimed. Maybe we can talk about that tomorrow. Let's try and focus on Mama's stuff for today. Okay, so that we don't change the topic before we even get started. All right, so every week, once a week, we have session. We have a session a week where we listen to those who have gone before us. Some of them are alive. Some of them have actually literally left this earth, but their wisdom is something we still cherish, and we get to learn from them every time we have sessions like this. The person we're going to be listening to today is actually someone very dear to my heart, and that's interestingly because of today's topic. She wrote and published a book before she left this world. I think that's it's a seminal work. It's one of the most important works on African philosophy, and I think it's something that everybody should, take out time to study. The book is called Socrates and Orunmila, Two Patron Saints of Classical Philosophy. And one of these days, we're going to have sessions where we'll discuss. We've done it before, by the way. We're going to do it again. It helps us appreciate our own indigenous philosophy. And I've said it several times that one of the things that actually got me very interested in the whole idea of Yoruba philosophy is when you study history of other parts of the world, and then you discover that different parts of the world have, philosophers, and you say, okay, Socrates or Plato or Aristotle, and you think Greece or Greek, those are Greek philosophers, you think Confucianism or Confucius, you think China, and you begin to wonder if we have anything like that in Africa, or at least in Yoruba land. And it's a beautiful thing to know that we have Orunmila. And if you study him as a person and his works from a philosophical standpoint, you will understand that just as we can, I did philosophy in school. That's some of the courses I took in school. Just as I can understand and appreciate Rousseau or Locke or Aristotle and so on and so forth, you can also appreciate Orunmila. And when the time comes, we're going to have a number of sessions, actually, I should say, not just one, on Orunmila and his philosophy, which is what Ifa is. It has other things, but that's the perspective I personally like to engage with it. All right, thankfully we have someone who is no longer with us, but her works are still here. And I'm talking in person of my professor of philosophy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read her bio, and then I'll tell you about what we want to listen to. It's actually a replay of an interview that was conducted on OGTV. Now, OGTV, anybody that knows does anybody know OGTV in the comment section? Have you ever heard of OGTV? Let me just see the people who grew up close to where I grew up. If you grew up in Lagos or your Ogun State, you must have heard of OGTV. Okay. There's a set of OGTV. That's good. Okay. Oh, yeah, from Abeokuta. That's nice. That's cool. That's really cool. So, Ogun State Television on GLG for those of us who may not know, Ategumang for some reason they have this powerful, I don't know what they call it, maybe it's transmitter, that, even if you're not in Ogun State, you still, what punishment so no? She frequency. Those technical terms. Essentially, the point is that you're able to watch the channel on your TV, even if you're not in Ogun State. So OGTV was that channel. All right, so we're going to be listening to something from OGTV. So it's something that they did. We're just blessed to be able to have that content online. All right, so let's start by reading Mama's bio, and then I'll read some things about the topic of today. Professor Sophie Oluwole, 1935 to 2018, was a distinguished Nigerian scholar, philosophy, and educator, known affectionately as Mama Philosophy or Mama Lawo. She was a pioneering figure who became the first woman in Nigeria to be awarded a PhD in philosophy. Professor Oluwole's academic journey was marked by significant milestones in challenging Western-centric educational systems. She dedicated her career to validating African oral traditions, particularly those of the Yoruba people, as a structured, rigorous, and legitimate philosophical system. She argued that these traditions offered complex insights comparable to those found in Western philosophy. Her research and publications such as Socrates and Orunmila, Witchcraft, Reincarnation, and the Godhead, and Philosophy and Oral Tradition were instrumental in reclaiming indigenous knowledge. She famously synthesized the teachings of Orunmila with those of Socrates to highlight the depth of African intellectual heritage. She served as a professor at the University of Lagos, where she also held the roles of the head of department of philosophy and the first female dean of student affairs. Additionally, she taught at Lagos State University, where she served as the acting dean of the School of Communication and contributed to the development of the mass communication curriculum. Professor Oluwole described herself as a critical traditionalist. She was a vocal advocate for the inclusion of African thinkers in education and was deeply concerned with the role of women and gender issues, which she explored through the lens of Yoruba philosophy. She believed in the importance of native languages in early childhood education and actively campaigned to reclaim and preserve African intellectual culture. After her retirement from the University of Lagos, she continued to work as the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for African Culture and Development, remaining a passionate promoter of African philosophy until her passing in December 2018. Fantastic stuff, isn't it? So what are we listening to today? Again, it's an interview was conducted on OGTV many years ago, and I'm just going to tell you about it. This interview is a masterclass that every one of us should hear. We need to hear it. Professor Sophie Oluwole strips away the layers of academic elitism to ask a simple, groundbreaking question. Why do we prioritize Western philosophy while ignoring the profound wisdom of our own ancestors? In this session, she places Socrates and the Yoruba sage Orunmila side by side to reveal that African intellectual history. I'll tell that again. In this session, she places Socrates and the Yoruba sage Orunmila side by side to reveal that African intellectual history is not only relevant, but superior in its depth and humanistic approach. The discussion challenges the very foundation of what you were taught in school. Professor Oluwole dissects how history has been framed to make African thought appear primitive, exposing how these narratives were used to disconnect us from our true intellectual heritage. It is a bold, unapologetic look at how Orunmila's philosophy offers a more balanced, rational, and sophisticated framework for understanding the world than the Western models we have been forced to accept for generations. If you're tired of the same old narratives and feel like your education left out the most important parts of who you are, this video is the reset button you need. Professor Oluwole does not hold back, and her insights will change how you view your culture, your identity, and the global history of human thought. Stop letting others define your reality and start engaging with the genius that has been hidden in plain sight. That's a mouthful, but that's a beautiful way. That's a beautiful way to describe what you're about to listen to. So now, here is Professor Sophie Oluwole, as she speaks on classical philosophy, particularly Socrates and Orunmila. Please power tap on TikTok, on YouTube. You know, it's philosophy, so it may sound deep, but don't worry, it's something that we hear every day. We just may not have understood it at this level, but you're going to enjoy it, I promise. All right, so here's Professor Sophie Oluwole. Enjoy.
House. She is indeed a woman of note, a woman of substance, an epitome of what womanhood stands for. Our guest is a president at one time of the Nigerian Philosophical Association, and that was between 1987 and 2002, a professor of African philosophy. Let me welcome Professor Sophie Oluwole, a professor of African philosophy, to the studio of Hot Seat this moment. It's nice to have you with us here, Professor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the honor. I'm happy to be here. I've been out of the business for 14 years, but I'm still around. Thank God for that.
Professor Sophie Oluwole backed a PhD in philosophy from the University of Ibadan in 1984. She had Master of Arts in Philosophy from the University of Lagos in 1974. Her first degree, which of course was second-class upper division philosophy, was also from the University of Lagos in 1970. Our guest on the program today, between 2006 and 2007, was acting dean at Debola Adegunwa School of Communication of Lagos State University, 2006 to 2007. She had before then been head of Department of Philosophy, Lagos State University, 2004 to 2005, Dean Student Affairs of the University of Lagos, year 2000 to 2001, Head of Department of Philosophy, University of Lagos, 1999 to 2000, among other responsibilities at the University of Lagos. She has so many publications to her credit. Among them are Philosophy and Oral Tradition, Democratic Patterns and Paradigms, Nigerian Women's Experience, Womanhood in Yoruba Traditional Thought, Witchcraft, Reincarnation and the Godhead, African Myth and Legends of Gender, which was published in collaboration with Dr. J. Akinshofoluwe in 2004. She also has one of the latest productions known as Socrates and Orunmila, two patron saints of classical philosophy. Our guest on the program today has edited several books, too many to mention at this point in time. She has a number of international engagements. She is a guest lecturer, or she was a guest lecturer to UNESCO's celebration of World Philosophy Day in Italy in 2008. Guest lecturer, Culture and Human Rights, Sun City, South Africa, among other responsibilities. Our guest is the first recipient of Jane Harris Award for Outstanding Contribution to the Progress and Development of Women in Society, Rotary International, 1997, among other accomplishments that she has to our credit. I must assure you that as the program progresses, further accomplishments of our guest will be exposed to you on this program. Again, we are pleased to have you in our midst, Professor Sophie Oluwole.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here.
Tunde Shodeka is also on the program this moment, and today we're talking about womanhood and African philosophy, classical philosophy, and we have an icon in-house.
Well, thank you, Shino, and let me again welcome Mama into our midst, and it's a real privilege to have you. This is one Nigerian that we've read so much about, and coming in contact with you face to face is a real privilege, and I want to appreciate God for your life. I will believe that you'll be able to educate us the more while the program progresses.
Thank you very much.
Now, I want us to take off from the perspective of African philosophy and classical philosophy. Any link? Any divergence?
Well, I think today, officially, there's nothing like African philosophy. I have about 15 books on my table, and the title of which is African philosophy. Some of them are collation of the conclusion is that Africans never develop critical, rational, scientific philosophy. That everything we had was religion and mythology. And that has been a challenge to me for all my life. I don't see how a nation can develop without having philosophy. Because if philosophy is the question of thinking about life, your experience, your ideas, about nature, your religion, I don't know whether a society can live without having those. So my work has been, I went through the rank and file. I was taught that Socrates was the father of philosophy, and I asked them, philosophy, whose philosophy? The pressure is that he was the father of world philosophy, and I discovered that that's the father of Chinese philosophy. And I discovered that Orunmila is a appellation in Yoruba language, is by far. If it's wisdom is philosophy, so the Yoruba people call him father of philosophy. So the question is, what is his philosophy?
And so we should ask you as an authority, what is philosophy?
Philosophy is a critical view of, you think about ideas, you think about common things. I used to teach my students the first lecture with a very simple question: what is a table? And they feel that I was crazy. But in the end, nobody will be able to define crazy, including me. What is a table? A table is an object with flat head, made of wood. Are tables made of wood? No. A table is an object with 4 legs. Are tables made of 4 legs? No. A table is something you can write on. I can write on your back. Are you a table? No. So eventually the question is, what is a table? And the philosopher does not know the answer. That is philosophy. Okay. That's the point that any answer you give is subject to correction.
Now, one of your books, the latest, if I'm not wrong, is Socrates and Orunmila, two patron saints of classical philosophy. I really want you to take us into this. This is quite heartwarming.
Thank you. When I say classical philosophy, that is where the problem is. When philosophy started, according to what we were taught in school, it started in Greece. And one of the greatest names was Plato. Plato actually was not the philosopher, Socrates was the philosopher, but Socrates did not write anything. Plato was the student, so he tried to document what his master said. And one of the most important books was The Republic. The Republic has something on religion, something on science, on physics, on chemistry, on democracy. So, in those days, philosophy is the study of everything, of nature, of human beings, of relationship, of religion, of theology. Until in the Middle Ages, when we thought that it was too big, you have to break it down to units. So every other discipline emerged for philosophy. But before the emergence of contemporary philosophy, everything we did was classical philosophy. Knowledge was philosophy, philosophy was knowledge. Physics was knowledge. As a matter of fact, my former VC told me that he went to university in Britain and he did physics, but there's no department of physics. The department is department of natural philosophy. So, if we are talking of classical philosophy, where every knowledge went to one discipline, that's what I call classical philosophy. And Socrates produced one. I might discover what Orunmila produced one. When you look at IFA, you find geography, there, sociology, there, democracy, mathematics, law, science, physics, chemistry, and electricity in IFA oral corpus, which has always been treated as a scripture. IFA is religion of the Yoruba people. And that is the challenge. IFA is religion, but not everything in IFA is religion. I think the late Patrick Pegag put it well. He said IFA is not religion, but contains religion. It is not philosophy, it contains philosophy. It's not science, it contains everything. So you have to go into IFA and pull out what we want from there. And what you are going to pull out is classical philosophy.
Now, what were those things that you were able to pull out from IFA?
Yes.
With Orunmila?
What I did was to look at about 100 things that Socrates was supposed to have said.
And he didn't say?
Well, they said, he didn't write anything.
So no empirical evidence.
There's evidence. Socrates wrote down something. About 35 dialogues which he had with Socrates and the others. 30 years after the death of Socrates, Plato wrote them down. So it's the testimony of Plato. This is what my Oga said. Oga did not write anything. Then I discovered that Orunmila also has 16 disciples. He did not write anything. They did not write anything down, but they memorized what he said. And since 1908, some Nigerians have been writing down what they memorized. So to me, the report of Plato and the report of Ifa, a record of somebody who did not write anything.
Okay, as you said earlier in your first remarks, that there's this challenge that is before you pertaining to African philosophy and the rest. Now, with this so much threaded in darkness, if I may put it that way, how do you think you can, in your own little way, make a headway in this direction?
Well, one of the things you discover when you read people are talking about African philosophy, I always say, what is philosophy? Expressions in words to be written down. Sometimes you write it, but you don't have to write to think. You think before you write. So if philosophy is thinking, how can you know African philosophy if you don't know what they say? 99% of people are talking about African philosophy cannot speak any African language. They have no contact with what the Yoruba people, Igbo people, Hausa people said. And they say we have no philosophy. That, to me, that is invalid according to logic. You must have evidence before you say. Now they come up with some things to show that, well, we Africans have philosophy, but it's inferior philosophy. They say we don't respect logic, we don't respect experience, we don't criticize, we just talk. And I have a young man who's working with me. I've given him a challenge. I want him to draw out some parts of Ifa and tell me whether it does not contain criticism. I can give you an example. In traditional Yoruba society, like any other way, there are slaves. There were slaves. And everybody believed that the slaves should be treated badly because it's not your own child. But as an Ifa side who said, that is criticism by excellence. They are criticizing what their people was doing, and that is philosophy. Your people are doing something and you remind them that what they are doing is not fair, it's not just. There's a very popular one. Some people say that Yoruba do not believe that children have rights. And they give me a very beautiful example. When I asked them to translate Regge in English, you cheat somebody. Can you cheat me out of what I don't have? It means they know children have rights, but they take it from them. So to start with, I must have rights. You can't cheat me if you are not taking my property. But my question is, how many of these philosophers, there are many of them who are actually taking what the Yoruba people, Igbo people say? Because philosophy is about what people say, not what they do. What they do is sociology. What they say is the expressions. How many people have collected expressions in some African languages to show whether they are critical, whether they are rational, whether they are stupid? They don't. They see somebody kneeling in front of a carving, and they say you are worshipping that image. Idol worshippers. Well, an idol is a carving. And the question, if I asked, you have an idol and you are worshipping it, you know what Ifa says? He said, I will beg in Igbo Kodolowo eni. Àwọn ọ̀rẹ́ èrè kò lè ní ìtẹ́ni tó gbìn. Ó lójú kò ríran, ó lẹ́sẹ̀ kò lè sáré. So the Yoruba people know that it's not worshipping that wood. It's a representative of something. Jesus Christ? No. I'm a Christian. Are you worshipping that? So when my father puts an image, you just to remind him of somebody who was there before. It goes beyond. And actually, there's a very beautiful piece. I'm sorry I'm not translating the Yoruba. I think most of my hearers will hear that. Ifá ló bá òrìṣà lọ sìn. Olódùmarè nìkan ló tó gbẹ́kẹ̀lé. So we are worshiping Olódùmarè through some agents, the way we do it in Christianity.
Okay, Prof, as it is today, I want you to take a cursory look at the situation now, where a lot of people are crying. You can cry everywhere that most of our traditional things are really going into extinction. We are not really giving them any place of...
because your tradition has been condemned. I listen to you on television, radio, they say our obnoxious culture. I begin to wonder whether I'm a Yoruba woman. I'm not saying the society is perfect. According to what I was taught in school, democracy was initiated by philosophers in Greece. So they will say that democracy is a gift of the Greeks. They gave it, then the French people took it up, then the Americans took it up. They were doing democracy. And I could listen to a former head of this country who said democracy is nascent, which means it is new, it is introduced. And I asked them, where do you get this idea? What is democracy? Justice, recognition of fundamental human rights, respect for men and women. In ancient Athens, women were not part of democracy. They have a meeting, a woman cannot be there. In France, the women did not have a right to vote until 1930 something. America did not give the women right to vote, even white women, until 1949. But let's come back home. What was the position of the Yoruba woman before colonization? The Yoruba have a say which is superior to that of Socrates. Àgbà mẹ́rin ló ń ṣèlú, àgbà ọkùnrin, àgbà obìnrin, àgbà ọmọdé, àgbà àgbà. When democracy came, they say politics is not for women. Is that going backward or going forward? Who is more democratic? We are more. Because the theory of creation in the West is that the woman is an inferior species of the man. You can see the Bible. Eve is part of crony from Adam. She has no existence of her own. According to the Greeks, God created many men, only one woman. And the woman was not given any quality, Pandora. And the men were very good. They were sympathetic with her. They said, okay, let's give you a bit. She was putting it in her back. She opened it and everything flew her face. What is the myth of creation? I'm talking of myth. And the Yoruba people say, yes, God created many men and one woman. They came to the world and they said the woman was useless. They drove her away. And the society collapsed. And then they now went back to God. This place is not good. We can't stay. God said, I gave you everything. Then he looked and said, where is the woman? They said, that's a useless woman. I said, you are useless. If she was useless, I wouldn't have created her. Unless you put her in everything you do. I don't know any democracy in the West that has reached that level. The Yoruba woman is a Yaloja, a Yalode, a Yagbe, a Yagan. Politics, she was there. Economy, she was there. Agriculture, she was there. Tell me somebody in Europe who was like Madame Tinubu. She controlled the economy of Lagos before the white people came. There was no woman like that. There was a case of, I'm talking of Africa now. I mean, now we all know her. She was the queen. She was riding on the horse. She was fighting and killing people, and she became a queen. The only woman who tried it, Joan of Arc, during the crusade. She won the war, but she was killed because it was a wish. We don't kill our women, we honor them. That is why you have people like Oya, whose appellation is obìnrin tó ń ṣíwájú ogun nínú tó ń ṣíwájú ọkọ nínú ogun. The woman who leads her husband in war. You don't have that in Europe. So as far as I'm concerned, you can only go back to study what our people are doing. We are more civilized. They will challenge me. I'm ready to face them. I have evidence before me that we are more.
So where is the place of Christianity and Islam here in all of this? Because a lot of people out there will now begin to think otherwise, that does Christianity and Islam have any place at all?
Oh, well, if you look at my postscript in Socrates, according to Paul, the author of the New Testament, women are not supposed to talk in the public. They are supposed to keep quiet. Anything they want to say, they must tell their husband. There's no Christian church until the last 2 decades who will allow a woman to hold an official position in the church. The same thing for the Muslims. But I think that is not the truth. When you see the religious people in Africa, we are there at the shrine, we lead. But I'm happy. You see what is happening is that we are very dynamic. When you go to Christian churches today, some of them, you have a Yagbe in the church. You have a Yaijo. And there's no Yaijo in Jerusalem. When you go to the Israel, you have Yala Salatu, Yadene. There's no Yala Salatu in Mecca. We are trying to turn Christianity to respect women because we respect. They don't. A woman cannot conduct mass in the Catholic Church. Cannot be a priest. Cannot be a bishop. But we have been doing it. So if you go to any whether Muslim or so, and they don't recognize women and they don't give you title, you will run away.
So what will be your take on what the recent breakthrough in England, in UK, where they passed a vote that women cannot become bishop, and you've just said that a woman cannot be given any lead responsibility?
Well, I can remember very well. I have a record when the Anglican Church decided to make a woman a priest. 4 priests decided in protest. They were married, but the Catholic Church accepted them because it's against the doctrine of the church. A man spends £70 to make a billboard on the street of London. Today, Christianity is dead. The day you make a woman, they are doing it, but not without protest. Women are now pastors that they preach, but I think the push came from Africa. You can remember that the Catholic Church, that's what the record I have. The priests have gone to the Pope. We are priests, but we want to marry. We are Africans, we must marry and have children. So we're actually pushing the West to realize that we are human beings first before you worship God. Whether you are male or female, you are human being.
Prof, let's take a look at the role of a contemporary African woman and vis-a-vis the traditional setting.
Yeah.
First, a mother. Second, a housewife. Third, a professional. Fourth, a member of our community. Fifth, somebody who is expected to transmit her cultural values and tradition to her children and other generations. How does she combine all of this?
Before combining, what does she know about her traditional values? She has been taught that African values are primitive. She's circumcised and oppressed. And one thing that I've read, I want you to ask the people to give us feedback. Do you know any Yoruba society where the woman is a full-time housewife? A full-time housewife means a woman who does not work. Who are the women in Kuta, in the market? What are they doing? And in this part of the place, the women must work. And thanks to my mentor, Professor Bolania, where I read in one of our books, aláìníṣẹ́ obìnrin obìnrin tí ò níṣẹ́ ara ẹ̀ ni ó tàjẹun wá kun ojú àkètè aṣàgbèrè lọ́nà ọjà. By virtue of being a woman in Africa, you must work. We are hairdressers. We make we go to the farm. So the idea of full-time housework and the man being a breadwinner is not African. But nobody teaches us in the school. All they ask us to do is to fight for fundamental human rights. What is your right? A right without responsibility. Nobody has taught me that I'm responsible. I'm just a wife. And you know the funny thing, when you say you're a wife, in this part, this modern woman, the man must pay for the rentage of their salary, he pays school fees, buy you a car, feed you. What do you do as a woman? What do you contribute? My father sent me to school and sent you to school. Hallelujah. Then I should have stayed in my father's house. The man will carry all the burden, and then you know what we are discussing? Widowhood. Because we know we will kill him very soon and we inherit what they have. The woman, you see, what I'm saying is that I think we need to take a look at the curriculum of our education today. It does not teach us the positive and negative sides of our culture. What they are trying to give us that culture is obnoxious. It is bad. Female circumcision. Let me take that. You circumcise the female, and the anthropologists say we want to suppress the woman from enjoying sex. Fine. But we circumcise the men also. They say, yes, you want to make him virile. Fine. So what do you do today? You stop circumcision because it is primitive. you give your daughter condom to promote promiscuity. That is development. Then the white man does not circumcise the male. But they have told them that they are very liable to infection, cancer, HIV. And why are we not fighting that we should stop circumcision of the man here? If it is against the women, we are still circumcising the men. Doctors are circumcising the men in the hospitals. Am I saying you circumcise the woman? No. I am asking you, what's the alternative? If you remember on the television, the young girl was going out on date, and the man said, I hope you are ready. The girl pulled out condom. He said, that's my daughter. Today we have changed. Today we are saying sip-off, which is what we used to say, you should marry as a virgin. Control, self-control. We never learned that. So the woman today has been told that she was not supposed to work. That is a lie. She's educated in quotes. But what is the education she's given? The ability to speak in English without speaking her language. The only way I can see two people they work, and the one who is educated is the one who can speak English. Is that the meaning of education? Education is passing down knowledge, skill, and ability and competence, which you don't have. When my students are graduates, I give them a party. Be honest philosophy, what does it qualify you to do? Nothing. I have a knowledge of Socrates and Aristotle, and so what? I go on the street, nobody said it. But I had a student I sent to Abeokuta to learn Adire. I think the problem is that we are giving the mother woman the wrong education. She's supposed to work. She's not full-time housewife. She must create time. She must have her children. I mean, you take your child to the baby kid and give her Negatil. By the time she's up, she's mentally deranged. Now the question, how do you cope with the housework and office work? And my question is, what is office work? Is there any difference between work and labor? The woman in Niagara does not need to go to office. She's working and she can take care of her child. But when I'm in employment, which is capitalistic, which means they are using me, then I have to give my children that I cannot carry my baby. And now the woman is in trouble. Because the money the husband is making is not enough. So she has to employ an unemployable girl of 15 to take care of a child. And tragedy is the result. I think what we need to do is to redefine economy. And the Yoruba has a very beautiful saying, we always think that work is labor. No. I can work all my life. I'm not looking for employment. The World Bank will tell you that Nigeria, they are unemployed. Please, who employed my mother? Who employed the women in the market? They are working. It is work that brings money, not the employment is when you cannot work or you not to go home to your husband when you be sleeping with your husband. That is employment. Is that our goal of work?
Now, Professor Oluwole, there is also a trend that is worrisome in contemporary world of today, particularly within the African setting. You go to most homes, you'll be amazed at the near extinction that our languages are going into. It is almost a taboo in most homes for Yoruba language to be spoken, for Igbo language to be spoken, for Hausa language to be spoken. Does it suggest that those who are engaging in this are even more knowledgeable than even the Westerners themselves, who also do not sacrifice their own culture and tradition?
Okay. You know, the first thing you want in this world is prestige. If I speak English, yes, that woman is very knowledgeable. That's the standard of measurement in this country. Speaking English. I would say we should fight illiteracy, isn't it? My mother could read and write in Yoruba, but she's an illiterate. Is that the definition? We have defined education as literacy in the English language. So I want to be educated, I want to be literate, so I must speak English. Whereas, you don't even know what you are speaking. The English you are speaking, you don't understand. Let me tell you, I was teaching a postgraduate class, and I wanted to test. I said, when you go to the village and Igbo man to take your wife, he said, I pay dowry. Beg your pardon. I pay dowry. Beg your pardon. They all have blueberry, which I didn't have. I said, please, can you look at the meaning of dowry? The amount of money and wealth a woman brings to her husband. Is that what you do in Nigeria? And you are speaking English. You see, once you think that the sign of being educated is speaking English, then you don't want your child to speak Yoruba. Unfortunately. They discovered that the African child was smarter than the white child to the age of 6. But from the age of 6, the African child started to go down. And this explanation was very interesting. They said, yes, because the mother is not educated, so he cannot help him or her with homework. My question was, how did that child become smart until 6? So I said, okay, let me do a practical thing. Bring me 10 white children, 10 African children, put them in the classroom, and let me use Yoruba language to teach them. Who will run out of that school? The white child. Because they had to start learning Ewure Agutan. That's what you did to us. I was speaking language. For 2 years, I didn't know what is a goat. Then when I have to go to school, I have to start learning new words that the Oyibo man already knows. And the boy will be coming first, I will be coming last. If you know the tragedy of not speaking your language, you are killing your culture, you are killing knowledge, you are killing development. My boy told me that, let's do this something. Go to the school, secondary school, and said that we are going to have a symposium next week. I had to try to tell you what is a symposium. Pardon my rudeness. I have the teachers to tell you the difference between a seminar, a symposium, a conference, a round table.
A workshop.
Most teachers don't know. But tell the children, I fẹ́ ṣe ìpàdé àwọn ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n lọ́la. Every Yoruba child knows that. He knows ìpàdé, he knows ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n. But when you say a symposium, a conference, a seminar, but it doesn't make anything. The question I want to ask you is very important. Do you know any culture in the world, especially those indigenous, who develop by using a foreign language to teach their children? Not the Chinese, not the Japanese, not the Koreans. The day you start to, we are supposed to become with something like that. You kill that child because it doesn't know what you are talking. The Russians were in space before America. Yuri Gagarin did not speak one word of English.
Now, the cultural diversity of the Nigerian nation, is it to our advantage or otherwise?
My dear brother, what is cultural diversity? We are 256. You want us to speak the same language? Why can't I teach my Yoruba child Yoruba? Igbo teach your own and teach your own. You see, your federalism does not seem to have meaning. We take only one language. My mother was speaking one language. Your mother was speaking another. Why shouldn't I know that before I go to study English? We can start studying English. But let us be. That is what Fafongwa told us. He did it practically. He had a school where English was not even just spoken. They used English to teach all subjects. And they did better than every other child who was taught in English language. We are not saying the whole of Nigeria should study Yoruba. No, let the Igbo children be speaking Igbo. English will put us together. But every nation, you have you don't kill. The World Atlas of language said that in the next 200 years, about 3,000 languages will die. And they will be from.
Do you think we can do to retrace our steps? Because you have also talked about education, which of course is not really going in the right direction that one can actually...
No, it's not that it's not going in the right direction. We don't know the meaning of education. If you look at the professor of education, education is a process of socialization. Transmitting the knowledge, the values, the principle, the skill of one people from generation to generation. What we have in Nigeria is not education, it's literacy. You are transmitting the knowledge of Europeans to your people. You are transmitting their values. Somebody was saying that in Africa, we expect the girl to marry. That we ask them to marry early. Well, I don't know, but I think Okot he said in African culture, every young man and young girl is supposed to mature and marry. It is only according to the West where childlessness, wifelessness, homelessness are virtues. Those are vices. If you are, I like to know tabadaka no do fin so ni en tí ó bá níyàwó kó ká wọlé kó lọ wáyàwó lọ́nà ọjà. A man who is of marriageable age and is not married will be stigmatized. Either is okobo or he doesn't have money. It's not only the woman is supposed to marry. If the woman is supposed to marry, he must marry a man. Are we not supposed to marry? But at what age? With what competence? We have universities that are turning out people who are literate in English. The professor of electrical engineering cannot repair the lift. Quote me. So, what we are trying, people who have theory but no knowledge, who have theory but no skill, theory but they have not developed competence. And I will ask you, which country can develop without skill, without knowledge? Even if our own knowledge is the field, yes, you are supposed to upgrade it. Let me ask you a question. If you are studying political science, how many books and how many classes do you study the political system of the Yoruba people? Thomas Hobbes, Plato. As if we did not have. And when they tell me that African political system is monarchical and dictatorial, I don't know the meaning of that. The Oyo people have 6 people. Without that decision, the Oba cannot do anything. If he goes beyond his mandate, they will send him out.
Maybe what actually pushed us to this extreme is because we could not document most of our things.
We can document. We refuse to. We were bribed not to. We were miseducated not to. We were asked that we have nothing to record. In fact, it's idolatry. My daughter said I should not put this on that table. Orunmila is fetish. I'm sorry to be personal, but you see, the white man don't blame them. They have a syllabus of education in their country. They brought it in. But why are we? My father could not write. The day he was told that if I go to school I will write, he was very happy. He sent me to school. But please, sir, how much of Yoruba have you written? The man told you we bring the truth on his culture. We can't speak Yoruba, we cannot write it. So he wasted his money. All the money he paid me is to write the stupid English that I'm talking now. So what I'm saying is that this country must look and know the meaning of education. Take the minimal education is to prepare you for life. 80% of Nigerian children will never step out of this country. But they know the Queen of England, they know Victoria, they don't know the Oba. If I ask you now what's the name of the Oba of Akure, you don't know it. And you are going to live in this country. I think we have gotten education wrong. We don't know. Education now, you see, this is where they miss it. My mother will teach me what she knows. She's educated me. But as time goes on, we discover new things. There's nothing wrong in bringing it. But what is dangerous is to throw away everything. And funny enough, this Orunmila you are calling a fool, he has said it. Aṣàdànù aṣàdànù lọmọdé ṣàkóso àwájú ilé bàbá ẹ̀ tó bá yá ilé wa ń dahoro ẹ̀dẹ̀dẹ̀ wa ń dàkìtàn. We have thrown out everything important in our culture. Our society is now a dumping ground for ideas and values that now the Yoruba man who said it was stupid to ask the girl to marry as a virgin is asking her to see Paul. Virginity is back. But it was primitive. Every society is supposed to develop. But because we don't know who we are ignorant of us. You can't develop what you don't know. When they say politics is not for women, we should have told them it is. I was giving a lecture here in Abeokuta, and I was saying this, and the women in the market, they came, they embarrassed me. They started dancing. Dagige, dagige, ake, kole, dagige. Dagila, dagila, elako ole, dagila. Bí òṣèrèlú, bí òṣèrèlú, bí òṣèrèlú àtàpè lọ Òṣogbo ole. That was òṣèrèlú is women in the judicial system. We had that. Through the years of military, how many women were there? How many governors do we have today that are women? The question now is this: why are women not contesting to be? Because we have been told that it's not our business. We have been disempowered. So don't go there. It's not your area. My mother was Yalaje, nobody asked me not to go to the market. But now when you are there, I don't go there, it's for men, no. Our education has turned off from being civilized to primitive. And it is a fundamental problem.
How receptive are women themselves or fellow women who aspire to leadership positions? I recall time was in this country when a presidential primaries was to be done of a political party. The only female presidential aspirant did not even get voted for by other female members of that party. She was the only one that voted for herself.
We are perverting justice and democracy. Now, democracy means women voting for women and men voting for men.
If women that were even delegates to the election did not vote for a fellow women.
The democracy is not about women voting for women and men voting for women. You vote for the person who is right. How many men voted for her? I agree with you. She had only one vote, which was her own. But if you want to say that, then all women should vote for women. That is not democracy. I will vote for a man if I know it's good. I will vote for a woman, but nobody, whether male or female in this country, voted for that woman. We are not democratic.
Our guest on the program this day is a professor of African philosophy with deep knowledge in what is known as classical philosophy of today. She is Professor Sophie Bosede Oluwole, who of course has over 15 books published to her credit, with several other books edited. She's also delivered several local and international lectures, among which is this one, which she delivered in 2001 in Switzerland. Europe Philosophical Debate, Africans' Expectation from Europe and Europe Expectation from Africa, which was in Switzerland in 2001. She belongs to several bodies, among which are the Nigerian Philosophical Association, International Association of Women Philosophers, International Academy of Letters, Women in Academics, among others. Today, she is the Executive Director, Center for African Culture and Development, and she retired from the University of Lagos in year 2000. The program remains hot seat. How ready or otherwise are you for international engagement on this latest publication, Socrates and Orunmila, two patron saints of classical philosophy? No doubt there will be so much issue that will be raised on this book.
Let me say where I am. I believe in Yoruba. I'm not saying they're perfect. I take some of their principles. If I don't know Yoruba philosophy, what am I taking to the international market? I'm a philosopher. I start to talk about Socrates and Aristotle. Then they ask me, what of your own? Sorry, we don't have any. I want to establish my base in this part of the world and teach these people. This book teaches you when you read it. That's Orunmila is 100 times better than Socrates. On one note, Socrates believed that philosophy is about knowing absolute. Orunmila says nothing is absolute. That is the problem of the West. The West believes that the knowledge they have is absolute. Orunmila says no, you cannot absolute, only God. Orunmila says, Socrates says it, but they don't practice it. They are the only ones who are telling us that when something is true, it is true. No, the Yoruba will tell you no. It is nobody possesses absolute. The Yoruba people is telling you that no matter how erudite you are, you must always remember you don't have absolute knowledge. Which is the lesson the West is here to learn. They think they have power, they have knowledge, and they must destroy the world unless we listen to them. We were practicing democracy before they came. If you ask me how many ruling houses you have in Ile-Ife, let me suggest it's 4. How can you have 4 ruling houses? 4. But for your information, the 4 are for one person. Apparently, the first man had 4 wives. The children of each wife have a right to be over. So actually the ruling houses are female houses. And they rotate it. Number 1, number 2. When number 3 dies, number 4 is supposed to bring a prince. If you bring a prince, the 4th one will look at it and say, we don't want this one. It will be famous. You go back until we get the one we want. It's acceptable to us. But that's not all. You tell the people in the town. These are the one who impregnated. The society will also vet that candidate. When the society finishes, then we have this religious belief. They say it is primitive. I don't know what is primitive. They will now go to Ifa. But for your information, when you want to vote your president, don't you go to the bishop to pray for you today? Everybody is contesting. The governors are known to go to Redeem or any other church to pray. And that's what my father did to go to Ifa. So what are you talking about? Because to us, we are calling God to tell us who is right. Now, if my father had 4 wives, and each wife has a right to the throne, is that not justice? Is that not democracy? It is. But because we are not taught this, we didn't know it. There's a process of choosing. Today, when the hooligan comes from America and has stolen money and is a cocaine pusher, he will become a governor. Try it in your village. They say, You don't know his father. It was Amrapa. He cannot be over here. But that one, it has no place in Western democracy.
Now, of all the chapters in this book, which one is most interesting to you, that you think you really wish to go over and over and over again?
Chapter 3.
And what does that do?
I have about 70 verses. Says what Socrates said. And 70 of what, and I compare the two. You will almost faint. Not only what they said, when you look at Socrates before Jesus Christ, Orunmila lived at that time. The father of Socrates was a stonemason. The father of Orunmila was a stonemason. The mother of Socrates is virtue. The wife of Orunmila is virtue. The two of them told us that the most important thing in this world is virtue, knowledge, not money. By the time you look at them, you think maybe Orunmila died and reincarnated or so, vice versa, because the two of them in life, in speaking, in everything, that two seem, except that Orunmila cautioned Socrates. You cannot have absolute knowledge. If you read that chapter alone, I will be satisfied.
But for someone like you and maybe a few others in society that are so passionate about African religion, African tradition, and the rest, now let me put it to you. What would be your position? Because in those days, when someone is about to ascend to the throne of his forefathers, there is always this consultation somewhere, maybe with Ifa or what have you. But these days now, that seems not to be the order of the day. The trend has changed. People believe that once, as you rightly said, if you come in with a lot of money, if you have a money bag, and you are able to bribe your way through, you get whatever you want.
Let's talk of the realities. You are talking of theory. Are you telling me that when you want to appoint a governor in the state, there's no secret group that decides? It may not be far. You have a place where this is the man we want. That's our tradition here. We are still doing it. Whether there's a fund done it. Do you know how the Pope is chosen? The Pope, you lock the door for weeks. You see a flame. What were they doing? We don't know. At this age, if I have only said they do it in secrecy. Now, I'm not even talking about African religion. It's a very dicey area, psychology. But for your information, there's one thing. As far as I'm concerned, Christianity, Islam, and all the religions I know, they believe in one God. They say we are polytheistic. We believe in small gods. Somebody wrote that Orunmila is God. Who is the God? In the language of the Bible, a God is somebody who is up there, spiritual. Orunmila, we know his father and his mother. How can he be God? Orunmila is Orisha. Somebody is Orisha. Who is an Orisha? Somebody who has been so blessed and favored that he brought development to his society. So, for the Yoruba people, Jesus is Orisha. Muhammad is Orisha. There are people who made this life worthy. And Jesus himself said, my father. He didn't say it's God. So Orisha is not God. He's an agent. We go through him. And I could not have gone through Jesus Christ because I didn't know his name in my village. If the people who came to my village, Songo brought lightning, Ogun brought technology, if I brought wisdom, who am I supposed to use? I will now call Moses. Who is Moses? Who is David? You don't have record. You be from your society. Who was the one who made this society better? That's why you have chieftaincy titles. That's why you have heroes and heroines. As I say in my there was a woman in Ghana. The Ashanti people were fighting against the British people. The men were running away. They said, I know you are cowards. She led the war against the British people. She's a hero today, but she's a deity. She's not a deity. You may dare fire. You may call her. No, you know it's a human being who is worthy of respect. I gave a lecture. Somebody said, all the things I'm saying about fetish priests. Okay, what is the meaning of fetish? Plato was a priest. He had a shrine. He worshipped there before he teaches mathematics. Orunmila was teaching mathematics. It's a question. You see the problem we are ignorant of our culture. And the result is that there's no culture that is perfect. There are good parts of your culture. But before you can segregate, you must know the culture. We don't know our culture anymore. So we try everything, even the beautiful part of it, we don't know. So I had to start doing this after my PhD. I wrote my PhD. I wanted to say Yoruba ethical. My professor said if I spend 20 years, I will never have a degree. There's nothing like Yoruba ethics. The Yoruba people have no morality.
Are you serious?
I can quote it. My proposal was the rational basis of Yoruba ethics. He said Yoruba people have no morality. If you see what Orunmila here, everything about morality is here. Honesty, paying evil with evil, winning they do evil, that's Socrates, everything. But the man said there's nothing like Yoruba morality. A professor of philosophy.
Prof, what actually inspired you to delve into this terrain? Because this is one area that you rarely find women going into, talking about philosophy.
Well, for me in Africa, in Yoruba, my woman is not a disqualification. The Yoruba said, talking about it, so the encouragement they gave me that I can be as stronger than a man. So from my background, I didn't see myself as a woman. I'm a woman being. Now, what made me start this is very simple. When I was in the class, my teacher had the first class from Cambridge. And he said Africans are fatalists. What is fatalism? He said, you will die at Onubuska on 10th of August 2024. And you tell him, suppose I don't go to Tunubuska, the Africans say you will still die there. I could not understand. How can I die in Tunubu when I didn't go there? He said that is how the African thinks. So I have to go back and ask myself, how do I think? You know what I discovered? If I go to a Babalawo and he tells me this boy will die on the 20th of August at Tunubu, I will ask him, what can I do? He said, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do. Okay. I will tell the boy will live at Mandela Road in Yaba. Tomorrow I'm supposed to die at Tunubu. He will lock himself up and throw away the key. He believes that as long as I don't get out of this house. So, at about 11 o'clock, the stove is usually will blow up. There will be flame in the room. People will come with collars. He's unconscious. They put him in the ambulance. They drive him to General Hospital. He dies at Tunubu at 2 o'clock. He has done something about it. So my father is not stupid. He knows that there's something beyond your control. It doesn't mean that even if you are in your room, how can you be in your room and die at Tunubu Square? So I started challenging everything he said about Yoruba. We have no reason, we have no culture, we have no... And so that I have to go back home. And that's what I'm still doing.
Now, Professor Oluwole, Nigeria of today may be of worry to you. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
In your capacity as a private Nigerian, with this wealth of experience, who is doing so much to ensure that our culture does not go into extinction, what's your assessment of the state of the nation as we have it today?
I think it's a very interesting thing. If you ask me to ask me what I will do, which I know I will never have the opportunity to.
You may never tell.
Make me the Minister of Education. I will close down 90% of the universities in this country and turn them to schools of technology.
90% of existing universities?
Yes, where you do only theories. You need a carpenter. There is no carpenter in Yoruba land. You have a painter. You need somebody. You are just learning Socrates and Aristotle. My son did accounting. He went to the bank. They say he's not a professional accountant. He's a clerk. Universities are supposed to teach skill and culture and competence. Theory is just a question of those people. I was in Germany and I told the woman I wanted to go to university. He said, what do you want there? I said, what do you mean? He said, it's the children of the rich people. I said, what do you mean? He said, if you want to study, go to the institute, which we call it. She asked me to go and learn translation. I speak German, I speak Russian, I speak English. She said I should add French and Yoruba. By now I will be in UNESCO. I read philosophy, no work. So the problem of this country, I am saying, how the Chinese, the Japanese, they turn to their culture. They did not give up their culture, but they did not close their eyes to the West. For you to move, you must know your culture, know what is there, take something from my inside and develop it. But if you think you are going to transfer the system in London or the system in Washington, our children are confused. They don't know who they are. They don't know where they come from. The children will tell the father that you are a moribund Christian, you are not a, you must be a Pentecostalist. And I say, what does that mean? He will say you must accept Jesus into your life. I was baptized in 1943 and I was made to say I accept Jesus. He said, no, you must, I must do what?
So what do you practice as today? Christianity?
Godism.
Godism. And what does that mean?
I believe in God.
Professor Sophie Oluwole, it's time to go, but not without you giving a word of encouragement to Nigerians. When we have people of your caliber in Nigeria will get better, and the need for them to be.
Let me tell you that at times we are unfair to this country. I left primary school in 1950. The number of secondary schools in this country, I don't think they were more than 8. I come from a very small village. We have 6 secondary schools in that place today. So if you say that we are not moving, my problem is that we are not moving in the right direction. We need education, but what type of education? The Chinese people, we are told that all these phones we are using, their children will make it. Your graduate cannot make it. I saw a boy, the son of a professor, he was studying a Greek. He came to my house and said, Pam, can I say, Mommy, what is this? A Greek student doesn't know the Pam not. I think our culture, education should have a base. You see, when you have an orange plant and you remove the root, no, the root must be there, you can put something on it. I think we should understand education. Let us know what we have, what is good, what is not good. Let us improve. That's what the Japanese did. They went to, they copied them, they brought something and they developed. But people are waiting for something miraculous. And yes, we have done a lot. We have not done enough well, but I'm sure that if we know who we are, that is my fundamental question. I have a book, Africans, who are we? And the answer you get is what the Yoruba man tells you are.
That's what's going to be on today's edition of Hot Seat on the People's Tele. The last 55 minutes of Diary About have actually been philosophy, who has very deep presence in classical philosophy as it is called today. She retired from the University of Lagos in year 2000. Our guest has been Professor Sophie Bosede Oluwole.
All right, so you have been listening to Professor Sophie Bosede Oluwole, and I hope you have enjoyed every bit of that. One of the things that I hope we get to accomplish with this series and the kind of things that we do is to build a bridge, so to speak, between the is to build that bridge between the academia and the society. I think there's a huge gap between the town and gown, and it's a sentiment I've held for a while. A few years ago, I was having a conversation with a professor and was like, why do you do these things and you speak on some of these things that are actually quite abstract to the average person? And I said, because we have all these materials in books, we have all this research that has been done by different people, professors and doctors and all those things, but they're just gathering dust on one person's shelves. I think that when we have conversations like that, we try to bring it out in the open, we're able to actually tap, from the wisdom of, folks like this. And it's a blessing to have someone like Professor Sophie Oluwole. I'm just going to go through some of the things she mentioned, and just in case, some of you may have come a bit late. So she said that some people have said that all we have as Africans is religion and mythology, no philosophy. And I think it's a very important thing because a lot of us still move that way. I know one of the saddest things I've noticed is people who get passionate about an idea they don't really understand. And I think many of us are still locked in that, space where where all our conversations about us as a people is mysticism, right? You can't have a conversation without, and we think that that's actually who we are. That's not who we are. That's what we were told we are. And so people still have that conversation today. You're talking and they say things like, oh, they always go in the mystical path. This is not to say that everything is just based on materialism. Of course, there's mysticism in some aspects, but the idea that what you have in your culture is mysticism is not even local. It's not an original idea. It's something that was introduced to you by colonialists. And the idea basically is that if everything you have is mysticism, if you want to understand materiality or practicality, you have to follow our own philosophy. That's what they sold. And so even today, when people are angry and they're trying to make a point, we have this, at the end of the day, the conversation still goes back to religion, mysticism, and spirituality, no understanding of philosophy. And I think that one of the ways I personally know that a person has come of age is when he can talk, right? And not have to chalk everything down to something spiritual. Although I am a Christian and I believe in the spiritual and I understand it exists and I know its impact and everything. But as a people, if I can discuss the English, I can discuss the Greek, I can discuss, the Turks, the Chinese, why can't you discuss your people from a philosophical standpoint without necessarily going mystical? I'll tell you this. The easiest thing to do is to actually go mystical. Why? Because it shuts down the path to thinking. Once you say this thing is mystical, there's nothing to think about. And we're losing a lot to that. And I'm saying that to say that one of the things I like about Mama is that she's very, very practical and she's very balanced. Okay, this is not, about moving too far right or too far left, just understanding balance. And what this means basically is this: as a Yoruba person, you got to understand your philosophy. And like I said, when we are done with Awo and Civil War and Co, I'm going to have a session on Orunmila. One of the beautiful things about the person is the fact that, let me put it this way, I don't think, and this is me, right? I don't think that really sat down to study the concept called philosophy. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. You see, a lot of people did sciences and tech and stuff, or maybe went to school and just, studied what would get you to make money, and that's it. And that there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that many people, in my own conversations with people, never really thought of the idea of why do I think the way I do until they are much older. But you see, if you take time to study how societies are formed, you understand that it's based on their worldviews. And then at the root of that worldview is their philosophy. And just like Mama, I did some philosophy courses in school, and you spend a lot of time studying John Locke and Daniel Rousseau and Aristotle and Socrates and Plato and so on and so forth. And you're wondering, okay, and then you begin to discover that you actually do have, and then you begin to study, and then you're like, wait, this is wisdom for the most part based on observation. But it takes a lot of work to actually be able to do that, and then you're able to appreciate Orunmila. So, by the way, this to to say that one of these days, bring that book again, Socrates and Orunmila, two patron saints of classical philosophy. I'll bring it here and we'll have conversations about it. But I think it's important for us to understand the fact that our worldviews shape who we are, and it just so happens that the things that make us who we are is also religion to some people. And I've said it several times. Maybe when we have that session, I'm going to talk about it again. That and I want to speak to Christians, particularly, or non-traditional worshippers. If you can read Confucius's work, if you have ever read The Republic by Plato, then you can really differ. Now, I'm speaking to Christians, and I know what I'm saying. I'm talking generally to Yoruba people. Now, if I don't think a lot of us are okay. Anyway, if you can appreciate the wisdom of Rousseau, you can understand Orunmila, and you can do it without thinking mystical. When I speak like this, I know some people will go in my comments and I see it on YouTube. I just don't respond. They say, "Oh, why are you always making it look as if you can?" I'm like, Kilele. And the funny thing is that these are people who probably just got involved in this thing like a couple of years ago. If you really go deep into this thing, not just passionate about it, but understand what it is, you will discover that it's actually what your life is built on. It's what your life is built on. In terms of, for instance, some of the words that we use now, Ogboduni Weremi, that concept is not a religious concept. It's not a spiritual concept. It's a philosophical statement. Orunmila is saying Ogboduni Weremi. In other words, what you consider to be grand this year, the peak of your intelligence this year, is going to be termed madness next year. What is it talking about? It's talking about upgrading. It's talking about the fact that you don't rest on your oars, that you get better over time. Once you understand that, you can literally talk to people about, you can build, which is what our parents did, to be honest. You can build something on that concept. Like, listen, Goto Monsi is not there, is not all there is. What you know is not all there is. There's more to know. So you have to go deeper and understand more, so that by next year you're still relevant. That's what it is. And let me tell you something. People were angry with me sometime ago. I will do this thing. And we can't lose this thing. And I don't know. It gets painful. Sincerely, it will pain you when you study Chinese philosophy or Greek philosophy. It will really pain you, because you'll be like, I don't know. Say I will need to come. Meanwhile, but it's either some people demonize it, right? Say I'm a Christian, or I'm a Muslim, that is demonic. Or some people spiritualize it. Oh, awalani, they are wrong. It is not a religious bit. There is religion in it, but that's not, for the most part, what our fathers did way back is to use religion as a veneer, right? In but it's great to have someone like Mama, you know, and the book she wrote is actually a very brilliant book, and we're going to treat that book one of these days. So she said that people have said that Africans have no philosophy. All we have is religion and mythology. We have to break free from that, and the way to do that is not by passion and zeal, it's by knowledge. Okay, you have to understand what it is, understand what philosophy is, the idea of who you are as a person. I was telling some people some time ago that, and I think I also discussed it a while back, that there are several, let me find a way to say it, let me say it this way. In the Ifa corpus, right, there are several verses that critique certain people. In fact, there are verses that critique Islam. And studying that, you can call it criticism, but studying it actually gives you an idea what your folks thought of that faith. And once you understand that, then you're able to tap into their own wisdom. The whole idea of this thing is not to say, oh, I'm better than this person, or our fathers have something. It's to be able to learn from them and be able to replicate whatever it is that they were or that they did, or to build on what they've done. That's really what the wisdom in all of this is. But we can't do that if we jettison everything about it. And that's why Mama said that you should add new things to what you have, but don't throw away what you have. So I think one of the issues we have is that we assume that, number one, some people think we don't have anything. Some people also think that everything we have is bad. Therefore, our salvation is something from Europe or something from the West. Let me give you an example. If you really want to understand how societies grow, right, a very good example is Singapore. At the root of everything Singapore has done since 1965 is the Chinese philosophy, even though it may not look like it. And I'm saying this because I've heard even Lee Kuan Yew say it. At the root of it is Confucianism. In fact, let me just say this thing. Yesterday, I was doing this I was doing research on Confucianism. You see, in Chinese society, there are 4 classes of people, right? According to their own philosophy. At the top is the scholar official. In other words, every child has to go to school, right? And then you write exams. As you grow up, you write exams. If you pass, you join the what's the word? The crop of leaders, right? Political leaders in your space, because as a leader in Chinese society, you have to be a scholar. I mean, they're going according to Confucius philosophy. So the scholar is also the official in the state. Is also the one who works in government. Is in civil service. And Chinese civil service is not about 1960. It goes back thousands of years, right? So the Confucian philosophy is that at the top of everybody in society is a scholar official. And he earned it because he went to school. And interestingly, they still do it, but I'll come back to that later. So you have scholar official. Next to the scholar official, you have the farmer. After the farmer, you have the artisan. Because the farmer produces food, the artisan makes, the goods that you use, or the stuff that you use. The artisan makes it. Below all of them is the merchant, the one who sells. Now, because that's the core Chinese philosophy, and that's the way they structure the society, you will be able to understand why Chinese families, and you see it in Singapore, you see it even in South Korea, because they bought into Confucianism. You see why they spend so much time ensuring that the kids go to school, and they have all these classes and lessons and stuff. In doing my research, I watched some videos and read some things about how kids will come from school and then they have to go for one class and to another class, and the goal is to go to Harvard and things like that. And the whole idea is that they are connected to the root. Even though you may not see the direct link between Harvard and Confucius, but the idea is that if you're going to be among the top members of society, you have to be a scholar, because that's the only way you get into the civil service. Now, what I'm saying basically is that in 2026, you may be wondering, why are these people driving their children that much, whether it's in Singapore or in South Korea or in China? But the reason is because of the philosophy in that society. And that was what they built Singapore on. The idea basically was to have people that were educated, that had gone to school. It's not just about I have idea. It's about show kakini, show more. What have you been exposed to, right? And then you now have, essentially not. Let me say it this way. If you think in that Confucian way, the merchant, the man who has money, suddenly is not the most important person in society. In some parts of the world, the richest person is the one everybody listens to. In China, ancient China and this China, that's not true. The most influential person in society is not necessarily the richest person, is most likely the most intelligent scholar, because it's the one who has access to, power and office and things like that. All of that to say that the West societies that are formed, right, whether it's in the West or in the East, in China and in India or wherever, is based on their philosophy. And Yoruba people, we have our own as well, and we shouldn't jettison it. So I was saying that Singapore, for instance, built all of that based, at the core of it was Chinese philosophy, but they also built based on Western ideals, which was the same thing. And what Lee Kuan Yew did, right, was also the same thing Deng Xiaoping did, by saying, we're going to, take something from Russia and have communism, but it's not going to be like Russia. And it's going to, and the way Lee Kuan Yew put it, he says that the communism in China has been influenced by Confucianism, right? But then when they were about to move into the era that they are now in, they had to now take from the West. All I'm saying basically is that, just like Mama said, they will take from here and take from here to add to what they already know they are. Not to throw what they are away because they think that the shiny thing from abroad is better. The crazy part is that in most cases, the shiny thing abroad, as good as it is, the folks abroad will also look at you and look at what you have, and believe it or not, they might begin to copy it in their own space as well, which is how societies grow. There are many things you see in the West, for instance, that they go from the East. For instance, China printed before the Europe. China had the writing system before Europe. Europe copied that from them. Europe got, gunpowder from China. The point basically is that whatever you have, you cherish it. And the way to cherish it is to understand it. And hopefully with these conversations we're having, we'll be able to actually understand what we have as a people, appreciate it, and then be able to teach it to our children. And this is not so much to say, all of us, we have to do this, we have to do that. It's to actually say, understand. I'm saying this intentionally. What we need right now in Yoruba society, as far as philosophy is concerned, is understand, is knowledge. We don't know. We don't know. And I think it's the hardest thing for all of us, for many people to do, but it's the easiest thing you can do if you want to know. Just acknowledge that you are ignorant. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that you need help. The beautiful thing is that the help is not going to come from far distant lands, it's around you. But we have to first understand that we don't know. Someone was arguing with me the other day. Mama mentioned it in this video. They were talking about Orisha, and they just went on and on and on about it on Twitter. And I said, it was actually because of the float in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and some people were saying, oh, look at this Orisha, if it was here, people were doing floats in Brazil. In Nigeria, they're having religious conversation, which is sad. All they were discussing was that is Kinekon is better than Jesus, or just, that's nonsense. It's not even a conversation that has to do with religion in that sense. So I said, this Orisha you're looking at, that they were human beings. But they said, no, what do you mean? And what I've noticed about social media also is that you have these kids who are probably still in uni, and they will be insulting you and arguing with you about things that you have studied since you were in uni. Around the time most likely they were not born. The point I'm trying to make is they were just stalking, can you come by? I said, listen, if I need in your Londorisha, ó dárúkọ Ògún, ó dárúkọ Ṣàngó, ó sọ pé ìgbà tó ń ṣe nǹkan tó ń ṣe báyìí ní àwọn èèyàn rí wọn tó wá sọ wọ́n di òrìṣà. Mama just said the same thing in this video that we listened to. And the person just went on, no, they are spirits. That's the funny thing. We mystify things that we can easily understand. And I said, you have to understand that there are differences between Orisha and Orunmila. The person just went, no, I have read Kinekon, look at what this person said. I'm like, Obongo Bogokwe. The thing is this, that concept, and Mama, it's actually quite interesting that, it's good to hear people like this say it. It's the idea of heroes. And she said it, whether you deify them or not, they have become the objects of they become examples to their own people. Whatever you do with the spirituality of it is all good as far as you're concerned, but to the generality of the people, listen, if you're a Yoruba person, but you're Oshun is important in the Yoruba thought. Boya Ojomo, Shango is important in the Yoruba thought. So, but you will not have Shango. And people also assume that everything you see in a part of Yoruba land is general. Shango is not on Shango everywhere in Yoruba land, though. That's the truth. Okay? Because he's actually the hero of Oyo people. And Oyo is a subgroup of Yoruba people. But every Yoruba person recognizes the greatness of Shango, even if they are not Oyo. Every Yoruba person, I meant to say, every Yoruba person recognizes the greatness of Shango, even if they are not from Oyo, and they can still respect him, even Tom Babo. It is these days that people actually assume that all the deities are actually one religion. Like, people mean different things to different people. I was about to mention there are some Orisha that are, universal. When I say universal in the Yoruba thought, it's universal. Everybody, no more. But I want to just be localized from one place to another. But whether you know that one or not, and there's some that if I mention right now, you know that you don't do it in your family or in your neighborhood or in your society, in your community, but it's still a Yoruba deity. All I'm saying is that some of them are Orisha in terms of heroes, local heroes. I'll give you an example. We all know the story of Moremi and how important she is. But does that reduce her greatness. But Ibadan people also respect her. They respect her. I think we're coming to a point as Yoruba people, and this is my goal, by the way, for those who are always asking, I'd really answer because I know where they're coming from. But my goal is that regardless of your religion as a Yoruba person, regardless of your religion or lack of it, whether you're a religious person or not, you will come to appreciate Yoruba elders and ancestors. And in appreciating them, you may or you will get to hear things about them. The words they spoke, the thoughts they shared, their stories, the basis of our worldview, and somehow it might inspire you to create solutions for Yoruba people. That's my goal. Those who are spiritual and thinking about it, that's okay. But I know how I got here. And I think that we're going to find a way to teach it just like you will study Confucius. We have to find a way. I was talking to my mentor a while back. This was like last year. And we're talking about, why it's so difficult to get across to our people on things like this. Everybody, spiritualizes everything. And it was talking about the things that they've done. These are people who have been around for a very long time. The things they've done and the challenges they've had and the successes they've also experienced. And I think we can build off of that. We have to be able to appreciate the wisdom of the aged, regardless of what you believe today. That is important. I'll give an example. Buddhism is a very popular religion in China, but it is not native to China. Gautama Buddha is from Nepal. Is not Chinese, which is why I'm also very careful with people that say some religions are foreign. Buddhism is big in China, but the founder of Buddhism is not even Chinese. Confucianism is big in China. The founder is Confucius. Now, some people look at Confucianism from a religious standpoint, and they want to have that stuff or that religious experience, and that's, okay. But here's the thing I found, in my studies. Some of the people that pushed the Confucian philosophy in China, all across the landscape of China, were actually Buddhist monks. They were Chinese, they were Buddhist, and they also spread Confucian philosophy. How is that complex? It's not complex, by the way. Think of it like you're a Christian, you're English, but you're teaching Aristotle. Aristotle wasn't a Christian. Plato wasn't a Christian. Socrates definitely wasn't. Plato had a shrine. Pythagoras had a shrine. An Englishman who is a Christian, right, and teaches Socrates, Plato, and philosophy. We can understand that. But the Yoruba man, who is a Christian, who is talking about Ifa and Orunmila, suddenly becomes difficult for us to comprehend. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Just like you have the Chinese, who is a Buddhist, who is teaching Confucian philosophy. Why? Europe is built on, I've already started the session on that. I didn't plan to start the session today, but let me just say a few more things. Europe is built on identities, it's built on an identity that's actually, how do I put it? The European identity, especially Western European identity, is built on a few things. Number one is the Greco-Roman culture. Number two is the Judeo-Christian faith. Those are the two legs that the Western European culture stands on. Greco-Roman culture, Judeo-Christian faith. Now, each of the societies also have their own peculiar cultures. So the English have their own culture, the French have their own, the Germans, and so on and so forth. But because you have this European thought, or the Western European thought, is based on, is Greco-Roman and primarily Greek philosophy, because the Romans didn't give us philosophy. They got their own, they even copied Greek philosophy in Rome. Okay. Now, but of course, Rome was the one that spread, into some parts and conquered and colonized places like England, for instance. And so an English person understands that the philosophy of Ikonkota is actually Greek in origin, even if it was brought to the Isles by the Romans. What they are talking about, democracy and all this Senate and everything that you see with Caesar and folks in Rome, the bedrock of everything was in Greece. So it's Greek thought. Now, he is not Greek. He's not even Roman. He's English. But the Romans had taken that philosophy all over the places they conquered, including England. Okay? Now, the English person knows that the culture that they now have is based partly on that philosophy. So he studies Socrates and Plato and Aristotle from that mindset. Is trying to understand the worldview of a society. Also, the Judeo-Christian faith, primarily Christian faith, is also a huge basis for why I'm using England, Britain interchangeably, why the British society is the way it is. And so you have people, for instance, like Richard Dawkins, who will tell you they're atheists, but they want to be called cultural Christians. And they're saying it now because of what they're seeing with what political Islam is doing in the UK. They're telling everybody we can be cultural Christians. Why are they saying that? They are not Christians by faith, but they understand that the culture of the society is heavily influenced by Christian faith. So that even if you're not a Christian today, you still have that faith. So the point I'm trying to make is this. If Richard Dawkins, who is not a Christian or anything, is able to appreciate both Greek philosophy and the Christian faith, everybody can also do the same wherever they come from. What I'm saying, what my Torrents just put it this way. I think that we've been so colonized as a people that we think everything is either one thing or the other. It's very difficult for us to compartmentalize. We have this binary thinking pattern, which is a shame. And the people you're trying to copy are folks who understand how to balance different thoughts at the same. You can juggle different thoughts at the same time, and you find places where they all work together. I'll give an example. If you study Aristotle's idea of citizenship, which was one thing that threw me off when I was in school and took me a while to even come to terms with it. His definition of citizenship is not the same thing as what Yoruba people consider to be the definition of citizenship. A woman doesn't even have as much right in terms of citizenship, to be honest. If we are keeping it a buck as far as Greek society is concerned. But in Yoruba land, you can't even have a king's cabinet without a woman present. If I jettison Yoruba philosophy and I just say, oh, I want Ibomo Jumilo, what that means basically is that I am denying half of my population, right? Number one, of their right to contribute. Number two, of the wisdom that I can get from them. Which means that I can build society based on my own philosophy and still take something from Europe and add to it. The same way the folks in Singapore took something from the West and added those things to the Confucian ideology that they had in their own society. I hope all this Torrents is, I hope you're getting what I'm saying. And we have to do that. And we're not the first people to have this conversation, to be clear, right? We have fathers who had this conversation in the 19th century. Thankfully, a lot of them did something about it. And what they did was to domesticate ideas based on their own worldviews. So they'll bring something from abroad, but they'll have to compare to what they were and then find a way to synthesize both. And that's why you see with the Christian, Yoruba Christians particularly, who eventually did something like that Professor Giatonda called cultural activism, and who began to do stuff on Ifa, for instance. And I mentioned it here. One of the most influential work on Ifa. I'm looking at my shelf right now, and I just love the fact that I'm looking at them right now. Works by Reverend Lijadu. It's a reverend. I have two of his works here. One is called Ifa as Literature. This one has been translated to English by Dr. Abosede Emmanuel. The other one is Orunmila. Okay? Dr. Abosede Emmanuel is also a Christian. There's a book I have here by Professor Bolaji Dowo, African Traditional Religion. Then Olodumare, God in Yoruba Belief. There's one here, I think this one is Babalao. This one is Ayosalami. The point I'm trying to make is, our fathers, even though they were Christians and everything, they were like, let's also write down the wisdom of our own ancient. And I think that everything that you have, you shouldn't jettison it for some that is foreign just because it's shiny. And I wager that if you actually talk to you one day and ask you about, before we continue, not today, but we have another session on it. Whenever we have conversation here about Ifa or Mila, just understand that we're discussing philosophy. I don't care what your faith is. I don't care. I think your people are shortchanging themselves with the inability to have conversations beyond religion. It is ridiculous. It is a shame. It's too low. It's low. Because your father cannot be talking to you, and the only thing you're thinking about it is what is religious about what your father is saying. Maybe we don't think about it that way. This is our father speaking. Okay? The other day I was, sometimes I just take some time to think of some of these things. I think it was 2 days ago or so. So I was listening to something which I won't talk about. It was quite poetic. And so I just remember some verses of Ifa. I was like, there's a reason these people, and this is Hebrew, by the way. By the way, it's even Isaiah, so it's not that deep. It was Isaiah. If you read Isaiah chapter 9, the way Christ was described, very poetic. The entire book of Isaiah is poetry for the most part, and Proverbs. And then you think of the way Orunmila actually shared his thoughts in the Ifa corpus, and you will begin to wonder why poetry was a vehicle that they also used, even though these are civilizations. It makes you think. In other words, and by the way, one of the reasons, let me just say, one of the reasons is because it's easier for you to remember stuff that are said in that way. Musical, poetic, you're able to remember. And that's why I'm about to say, call and response. It helps them remember. And for folks in Ifa, imagine having to spend years learning things. So you have to have a method, a technique to remember all those things, which is the brilliance of our fathers. And it's the same thing you're going to find in the book by Professor Sophie Oluwole, Socrates and Orunmila, two patron saints of classical philosophy. Just as Orunmila didn't write anything, Socrates also did not write anything. Plato, who happens to be one of his disciples, is the one who wrote what we know that Socrates said. In other words, if we tell you that Socrates said something, we are saying it based on what Plato told us he said. Aristotle was a disciple of Plato, and then he wrote the Republic and other works. The same way, Orunmila okonko kanle, but I want to thank all our scholars. We have a lot of them, I can't even begin to mention, who have taken upon themselves to actually write Odufa. you know, and they've been doing this since, like I mentioned, you know, Baba Yemlija do, Abosede Mano, Professor Wande Abimbola, Salami, Ekpega, William Bascom, who's not even Yoruba nor Nigerian, Bolaji Dowu. A lot of them have done fantastic work. The beautiful thing is that we have access to those things, and I think we should study those things the same way we'll study Aristotle. If you've ever studied philosophy, you're going to enjoy when we do have those sessions, but you should come around for those sessions. Okay, now let us go on with some of the things Mama also said. She said, Agba mẹ́rin ló ń ṣèlú, àgbà ọkùnrin, àgbà obìnrin, àgbà ọmọdé àti àgbà àgbà. Unlike what they had or what they have in Europe. Yorùbá sọ pé ọmọdé gbọ́n àgbà gbọ́n la fi dálẹ̀ ẹ̀fẹ̀. In other words, you can't, you know, just say, oh, these ones are children. There's something the young also bring to the table. And she was talking about the Agba mẹ́rin ló ń ṣèlú. She said that when she was talking about the fact that women voting. When did they start voting? When did Europe get universal suffrage? Whether it's in England or even America. Okay, but in the Yoruba, Agba mẹ́rin ló ń ṣèlú, àgbà ọkùnrin, àgbà obìnrin, àgbà ọmọdé, àgbà àgbà. She also mentioned the influence of Yoruba in Christianity and Islam. She mentioned that we have Iyajo. You know, if you go to the Muslims, you have Iyadini. You don't have those things either in Rome, or England, or in what was it called now? In Mecca. It tells you that may God bless our fathers. Our fathers and our mothers found a way to domesticate the faith. They held onto the tenets of the faith itself, but they're able to interpret it through their own cultural prism. And that's why when you look at the African church, or CNS, or Sele, let's take CNS because I want to just use one example and it's quite popular. And Sele is also popular. If we take CNS or Sele or African Church, or any of these churches, or even CAC, CAC is even a bit closer. But if you look at CNS or Sele, compare it with CMS or Jora like that, what they are doing is only is just sharing. In fact, the CMS by 1925, when they started the CNS, the CMS that was around at the time is totally different from the CMS that was around in the 1860s. By the 1920s, at least not in Korean Yoruba, we decided in the 19th century, they started singing Yoruba songs. They were calling it native airs. They started saying that we want to express ourselves in our own cultural. So we want to have a cultural expression. We want to, express ourselves in our own traditional way. They started bringing drums, some that was alien to the CMS and the Anglican folks. Essentially, what they did was to make it theirs, which is why I tell people, some people may not agree, but it's the truth. Yoruba today Christianity today is a Yoruba religion. That's the truth. Islam today is Yoruba. At least the version that is practiced in Yoruba land, which is why it is different from what you will see in the north. Which is why I'm always also very careful when we talk about Islam with Yoruba people. I'm always like, are we talking from the perspective of Islam or the one that Yoruba people have practiced? Because the other day I was listening to Marcus Babalagege, and he was saying, and this was actually quite unprecedented. He said, Tabati Mason Yoba, Tororo Yofe Oribakan, Tabati Kaditi, Inti Obati Baogbon Lo, Aonigba. Think about that for a second. What's the basis of that statement? Inti Obati Bao Iwo Omoluabi Lo, Ogun kan to ko sibe ko la ma se. Tó bá ti jẹ́ pé kó on sọ, I have the video. Tí ó bá ti bá kin lọ ànígbà wọlé. Àwọn tó ń gbà wọlé náà bẹ́rí èèyàn tán para wọn yẹn. In other words, they found a way to interpret the faith, even whether it's in the spirit, you can debate that. but at least you can notice the influence of Yoruba culture in the things, even in the organization, which is what started with African Church, where they started having Baba Ajo, Iya Ajo. They were doing that intentionally. They were trying to redefine stuff and say, and they did that, by the way, let me just explain. They did that because after Bishop Ajayi Crowther, after became bishop, by the way, that was the very first black African bishop, okay? Became bishop in the 1860s. After became bishop, it became a bit more difficult for Yoruba clergy, I would say black clergy, but primarily Yoruba, but black clergy to move forward, right, or to go higher in their career as priests, because some Oyinbo started introducing racism into different things. They will use it to interpret scriptures. They were using it to also talk about why they should not be subservient to black people, even though they share longer than them. And then they saw what's happening with Ajayi Crowther. They didn't want to have another one. Those things started affecting the way they behaved, and Yoruba Christians said, nope, we are all Christians, but you're not going to tell me that you're higher than me in my own land. And that was how you had there's this church, there was a native church, then there was African church. We'll talk more about that some other time. Just trying to explain to you also that some of the things that people are shouting about in 2026, people talked about it in the 1800s. Why do I keep saying these things? I think it humbles me personally. It humbles me. I hope it does to others, to understand the fact that you are brilliant, but I'll call it brilliantry, and there are some things they did. And in your humility, if you can appreciate what they've done, you'll be able to build on it rather than repeating everything and acting as if you are new here. Well, you are new, but the idea is not new. It's like what Solomon said. There's nothing new under the sun. If anything is new to you, it's because you are new under the sun. Mama also talked about women working and full-time housewife. I had a session about this some time ago when we were talking about Madam Tinubu. And it's important to actually say it now. I don't know if you've ever thought about it. A lot of people have Tinubu as their surname today. What if I told you that that name is a feminine name? It's not the name of anybody's father. I mean, at least it did not used to be the name of anybody's father. Oshun Tinubu, that's a full name. Oruko Bereni. How did it become so important in society? Because the bearer of that name became so important in society. We're not going to have a session on Tinubu today, but you can read about her and the connection that a lot of people have with her and that name. So Yoruba women, we don't do housewife in Yoruba, full-time housewife in Yoruba culture. We don't. You know, we don't. Most of us, we know our grandmothers to be business people. My grandmothers actually never just sat at home and said we're full-time housewives. My mother was a professional. My wife is a professional. People work. The idea of a full-time housewife, and I'm saying this primarily because, number one, Mama said it in the video we just listened to. Number two, these days on social media, when people have conversations, they say things like traditional family or traditional couple or traditional wife. And what they're saying is American wife. But because the world has become, quote unquote, a global village, and we all use internet, we act as if we have the same culture across board. We don't. When people say things like a traditional man, I'm like, what? According to who? According to whose tradition? Because in Yoruba tradition, there's nothing like, it's not the same. Let's just put it that way. That the man will just, work, or the one will just sit down at home, or any of the things that you can even think of that people use right now. So how do they put it now? Modern men don't want to do something. They just sit at home and cross their legs, and then the woman has to do something. Or in traditional family, the man has to go out and then the woman stays at home and take care of the children. That is not Yoruba. That's not traditional Yoruba. That's traditional wherever it's coming from. In traditional Yoruba households, the father works, the mother works. So people say, oh, how does it take care of the children? To be fair, we had better support system, which a lot of us may not even like now because we are all quote unquote educated. To be honest, I don't even think we really understand that thing. If you're a parent here, we should ask ourselves this question. How close are our children to our parents? How close are they? You're guilty. I understand the realities, what they call. It's not like it's an easy job. I'm sure it's very serious work. But you see, the Yoruba mindset is that everybody has something to contribute to the development of society. And raising children is one way, but it's not the only way, right? And so a man will go to the farm, his wife or wives could also go with him, especially during harvest, or they'll go to the market, or they would have their own business. Yoruba people used to have alajakpa. We still do, by the way. If you've ever heard of that word, alajakpa, these are women who travel, they'll travel. It's a normal thing in Yoruba society. And she's trying to explain that Yoruba women work. And there's something she said, and I think it's important to say it. I think we also confuse or conflate two things, work and job. So we say things like, I don't work, or they are working. Most Yoruba women that even stay at home, one way or another, they are selling something. Whether it's beyond pateo, I want online, they are selling something. Okay, or one diri, there's always something to contribute, right? And that's what she's saying, that even though our own mother didn't, go to school, she had her own work. She had what she was doing, and she was making her own money, So you don't have to go to an office and collect salary to be saying, I'm working. Work is what you're contributing to society, and hopefully you also get rewarded for that. I think one important thing she mentioned also was dowry, when she was talking about that she was talking to a person in our class, and she asked what men do in that person's culture, and the person said they were going to pay dowry. If you check your dictionary, let me read to you what dowry means. Money or property brought by a woman to her husband at marriage. In other words, dowry is not what men pay, it's what women bring. And I'm not saying bring to the husband. In Yoruba culture, women don't move to the husband's house empty-handed. I hear something on social media, I just laugh. I saw one, I can't contribute because I couldn't contribute to this particular conversation because they'll just insult you. They were asking that should a woman have pots before getting married? And I was like, what kind of people are they raising in the world today? What kind of stupid question is? It doesn't even have an answer. One girl was saying that the man, if he really likes the woman, should set up the house and furnish everything, including the kitchen. And that a guy was talking to her, and it was like he was drawn back, or maybe he's going to call off the wedding because she said that plate, pot. Number one, I think it's a stupid argument, and I thank God I couldn't. If I had spoken there, they would have insulted me. That's the truth, because I don't know the kind of brains that people use. What's in pots? The guy should have a pot now, shouldn't he? He should have a pot because also eating at home. You should have a pot because you're also eating where you're coming from. Carry your pot to your husband's house. The husband also has pots now. What is this? Okay, what are you talking about? I know when they talk about marriage these days, it's as if you know it. They're talking about, the person must have plates and pots here as well. But the world is too serious for stupid conversations. Who should buy a pot? If you like, don't buy pot. How can you work as a person? You're making money and you're asking that a man should have pots in his house. And you that you're a man too, are you telling me that you used to cook at home before getting married to this person? Ridiculous things that we talk about. And that's, some people say, what do you bring to the table? One guy said, I'm the table. Okay. Rubbish. Anyway, all of that to say that in Yoruba society, of course, the man has a role. Everybody has their own roles. Everybody has their own roles. And I think what's happening, and we have to be very careful, because it's happening from both genders, right? So in the West, the women shouting, oh, they wanted equality and so on and so forth. And for the most part, they won. This just gets interesting. To be fair, some men are also very funny in Nigeria. So when they travel abroad, everything gets unraveled. But generally speaking, they got what they wanted. And now the men are pushing back, and they're also now going to the extreme. The funny thing is that in Yoruba culture, we didn't have the issues, which is why we have to be very careful with internet and the world being a global village. You can't be fighting that person's fight. Do we have a perfect society in Yoruba land? Of course not. Is our culture perfect? Of course not. Do we have our own issues? Of course we do. Is it the same issues as Oyinbo? Of course not. You can look at yourself and say, okay, what is our own issue? Let's fix our own issue. Not to be shouting based on the books that we read or what is happening in the US or in the UK or even in other parts of Nigeria. Even this country, different groups have different issues. You can't be having this almost universal thinking about ideas or about issues. It's not really like that there are things that are general, but many things that we assume are national in nature, national being Nigeria, is actually very local to people's ethnicities. We have to be careful not to interpret things from other people's perspectives. That's what that's all about. We're rounding up now. She also spoke about speaking native language and that it's important that children are taught based on language. And we've talked about this before. There's a man, fantastic gentleman, Professor Babs Fafunwa, who also used to be the Minister of Education in Nigeria. He carried out a research in Ife in the 1970s where he split a class in two. One group was taught all their subjects in English language. The other group was taught their subjects in Yoruba language. And the kids who were taught in Yoruba language did better than those who were taught in English language. You know, I put this thing out. I talked about this a long time ago, and somebody actually sent me a message and said he was one of those people that was put in Yoruba language and they did better. So I like the fact that, you know, you can still talk to the person is not a professor, by the way. Just to say that they've done this research over and over again. If we're able to speak English now, we thank God. But generally speaking, we have they raise us differently. You get the point. Generally speaking, kids should be taught in their mother tongue. Okay? And folks who say there's no word for something, think about it. How did they learn these things in German? How did Germany build all the things they built without speaking English language? How did China build all the things they built without speaking without speaking English language? Singapore built, sorry, not Singapore now, South Korea. Singapore got colonized, so those ones. And then Singapore also had a very interesting issue. They had to use English because they use English as a strategy without necessarily forgetting their own native languages. So Mandarin and Malay and Indian, they still talk about it. But they had to use English as it was a strategic decision because they were going to be attracting investment from the West primarily, and they wanted to be able to tell them that they had cheaper labor in Singapore. So that's nobody's bringing Guinea like that into. We are not speaking English strategically anything. Let's not lie to ourselves. But we'll do better. Okay. So many countries that are doing well in the world today, for the most part, they are folks who speak and think in their own mother tongue. And that's one way we're failing. And that's what she was talking about. That just like it happened with them, Professor Babsa Funwa, àwọn tó máa fẹ́ èdè wọn kọ́ ní nǹkan tó ń ṣe ní ẹ̀kọ́ will usually turn out better because, and I've explained this before, if you teach a child, I mean, don't think about your own children. And I'll tell you why. You probably raise them using English. I raise my kids with English and Yoruba. We speak both languages at home because although sometimes I intentionally just speak Yoruba. But maybe your kids were born wherever they were, maybe in Nigeria or abroad or whatever. So, but I'm talking about the society now, not your own children. Because when people say, oh, but my children. So we're talking about everybody. When you teach an average Yoruba person or Yoruba kid in English language, you are giving that child two jobs. Number one, he has to interpret what you are saying into the language he understands. Number two, he now has to understand what you are really saying. If you teach that child in Yoruba, you are giving that child only one job, to understand what you are teaching. But if you're teaching in English language, and that's why you notice all this people. Look at China now, and you may also say about China. See what China has done. China has gone to China, like one of our people said. But see what they're doing. So I think that's what she's saying. And interestingly, before President Buhari left office, he put a policy that the first 9 years of a child's education should be done in their local language, their mother tongue. I don't know how far we're pushing it now. Some governments started talking about, some state governments started talking about it. Even Lagos talked about it. And it's something that, folks should take very seriously. That way we can raise kids who actually know stuff, not just let me tell you one funny story. There's one school that I came across. Secondary school students, they will be reading something to them, they will now be repeating it. I'm like, which one is this responsory? Are you having choir practice? Everything the teacher is saying, they are saying. They are trying to cram the thing. They are memorizing it. That's not the way to learn. They don't understand anything, but they will write it down. I'm sure you must have had that experience. People can write stuff. They don't know jack. They can't explain what they are writing, but they are writing it because akosori. So hopefully we can go beyond just memorizing to understanding. She also spoke about the political system of Yoruba people and one second, there's something else I wanted to see here. I wrote it down somewhere. All right. She talked about reclaiming African identity. She talked about binary logic and modern science. She explained that while Western logic often follows a linear A or B path, African logic is A and B, and I mentioned it earlier. People do, is that this or that? And sometimes it could be this or that, but many times it is this and that. If you're always thinking this or that, that's binary thinking, that's binary logic. If you do this, you can't understand that. If you do that, you can't do this. In some instances, it is correct. So there are some things in life that are just binary. They're either a man or a woman. Those things are just binaries. But there are also things that are more complex. You can have this and that. For instance, you can be a father and a son. I am a father and a son. I don't have to be a father or a son. Okay? And once we use something this basic to understand it, you can be a brother and an uncle. So you're the brother to your sibling, but you're the uncle to their children. You can't now say because you are somebody's brother, you can never be somebody's uncle, or you can't be somebody's aunt because you're someone's sister. You can be someone's mother, but you're still the daughter of your own parents. So there are things in life that you can't just use the binary logic to understand. Say, is that this or that? You can be all those things and still be a blessing and not get confused. It's not that deep, to be honest. There's something that's not that deep. You can be a Christian and you are Yoruba and you understand Yoruba philosophy without having to have Yoruba spirituality. There's spirituality that you may not want to get. I don't mess with spirituality other than my Christianity. And I say it boldly. If you like, be angry, that's okay. I'm a Christian. That's my spirituality. That's my faith. But I'm Yoruba. That's my culture. That's my identity. And both are not contradictory. And like I've mentioned, many of the first researchers into Ifa and stuff that wrote books and books about this, about Ifa and all, were Christian reverends. You can have a philosophical approach to things the same way if you went to, if you probably met kids in first year, especially if you went to humanities or law, they must study philosophy. Kino Kowambe. They teach us about what Aristotle said, and they will teach you logic, and then one that went to scatter our head then was called social and political philosophy. They'll be telling you all these things. It's the same way they can tell you about the words of Orunmila. That it's academic, it is philosophical, it is opolo. It is, and I think people who don't, a lot of us who don't want to think, we run to religion for cover. Religion gives you that covering. Religions, and it's not right. Societies are not built that way. You have to be able to think. So, in Yoruba mind, the Yoruba mindset is not always binary. It's not just linear, A or B. It can be A and B because it's more complex than the stuff that people talk about. Okay, we mentioned Orunmila versus Socrates. We're going to talk more about it some other time. We'll talk about role of women in African thought. And lastly, I'll read this. Professor Oluwole begins by addressing the historical Western claim that Africans lacked the capacity for rational thought. She notes that for centuries, Europeans argued Africans were subhuman or irrational because they did not have a written script or formal philosophy in the Western sense. She refutes this by asserting that lack of a script does not mean lack of thought. So, we are blessed as Yoruba people. I'm going to keep doing this from time to time, again, from a philosophical standpoint. So again, I'm saying it now, I'm trying to prepare us for when we will start. If you have a religious kidney about any of the things that we'll talk about, I respect your religion. God bless you with whatever you are doing. But just think like you are in university. If you go to uni, I was talking about Pythagoras. For some weird reasons, nobody remembers to tell us that Pythagoras was also a priest of some sort, that he had two different types of followers. That there were those whose relationship with Pythagoras was mystical, and there were the others whose relationship with Pythagoras was mathematical. But today we all use my Pythagoras theorem, and for some weird reasons we don't remember rituals. I mean, the kind of rituals they used to do. I'll read this thing and then we'll close. Let me read something to you from A Polymath in Transit. Every time we want to have this conversation, I'll still read the book again. So don't worry, I'll just make it very quick. If Pythagoras were Yoruba, by the way, this book was written, is the biography of Dr. Tunde Adegbola, written by Moyofade Ikpadiola, A Polymath in Transit. This is what he said. If Pythagoras were Yoruba, he would have likely been seen as a Babalawo, a wise scholar and seeker of knowledge. He had two types of followers, the akosmatikoi and the mathematikoi. The akosmatikoi were the religious devotees, listeners who revered Pythagoras as a spiritual leader. The mathematikoi were the learners who extracted and developed the mathematical principles from his teachings. Over time, these two groups evolved into separate schools of thought. The akosmatikoi focused on the ritualistic and mystical aspects of Pythagoras' teachings, while the mathematikoi concentrated on the scientific and mathematical concepts. We're going to have more conversations on this later. Just to tell you that They did it, whatever it is we are talking about right now, they did it in Greece as well. By the way, we were doing it in Yoruba land as well. And let me also end by saying this. These conversations aren't meant to reduce the greatness of our fathers. It's actually supposed to enlarge their place in our consciousness, so that we take them from one corner of mysticism to the place in society where they are appreciated by all because they are known for who they were and what they did, and not just, and there's nothing wrong with those who want to look at mysticism. Nobody has any problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying that on this platform, when we have sessions like this, we will be focusing on philosophy, because this is a school. After all, we're in class, aren't we? Thank you very much for listening to Mama, Professor Sophie Abosede Oluwole. It's so good to have people like that walk this path. Makes things easy for us, doesn't it? Okay, we can learn and learn and learn. And hopefully we can also give stuff to the generation coming behind us. It's past 7. I see 2 people want to speak. You haven't spoken here before. Okay, we're going to make this very quick. So I'm going to bring those 2 people up. We'll listen to them and then we'll call it a day. We'll be here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. We're going to continue with Awo on Trial, the series on Papa Oluwole. We'll be talking about his defense tomorrow. So please join us. So we're going to quickly bring those 2 and then we'll have your thoughts. As soon as you get up, please mute. I will keep the submission to 2 minutes because I really have to run. Okay. Seems like they did not know they sent request though. So for some weird reasons, neither of them came up. Okay. I see it was not. Okay. Anyway, thanks for sending your request, even though it didn't come up. But we'll have a broader conversation on this. By the way, when we have these sessions, please get ready. We'll be reading lots of books. We'll be studying a lot. And we'll be growing together. And hopefully we can use this knowledge to also benefit society one way or another. Thank you very much for being part of today's session. We're going to have another conversation tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Let me just quickly play the anthems and then we can call it a day. Again, if you're joining us for the first time, we have these sessions every weekday, Mondays to Fridays, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Thank you very, very much. Before we go, we're going to listen to the anthems, the Nigerian anthem, and then the Yoruba anthem. Sorry, I didn't read people's comments. Oh dear. On YouTube. I read on Facebook. I didn't read on YouTube. Oh, 2 people just sent their request now. So you're not the original one. So was Adeola Odubote? I hope you can keep it short. Please keep it short. Bumblebee and Math Tuition. Keep it very short so I can. Good evening.
Good evening, Prof.
Evening, Chief.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing it up. So my timing is always very, very off on sending in requests. I don't like to send a request when you're doing the teaching. I'm ready to send when you tell us to come off. Yeah. So I just want to say 1 or 2 things to buttress some of the wonderful points you made. So one of the biggest and most important thing is the idea of indigenization. So I'll give 2 examples. Sometimes I like to make these examples not to sound boastful, but is just for people to be able to really see real life examples of how these things work. 2 examples is one is in technology transfer. So the idea of technology transfer based on Nigerian law is for most engineering fields in Nigeria, right? If any company needs to bring in a foreign expatriate, they have an obligation to train a Nigerian to take their position, right? To be qualified enough and knowledgeable enough to take their position within a space of 5 to 10 years. So that's why if you talk to a lot of expatriates, they will tell you that Nigerian visa is one of the hardest to get. In fact, 5 minutes ago, I just finished a conversation with one of my friend. He was like, look, he just got back maybe this week. He said he had to apply 3 times before he got his visa to come back to continue his work. So in the area of religion, Yoruba are always quick to get it right. You know, when you have a foreign face to religion, there's no real connection to it. So in the area of Nigerian Christianity, we've indigenized. That's why you see people like Baba Deboye, Baba Kumuyi, Baba Lola, and everybody. You know, that's full indigenization of Christian faith in Yoruba land. When it comes to the area of oil and gas as well, there's a lot of indigenization policy as well called local content. So there's actually a government agency responsible for that, NCDMB. They are responsible for making sure every oil and gas company in Nigeria, no matter this field, that there is Nigerian representation. That is why you see a lot of companies like Seplat, a lot of companies like, you know, Nigerian companies, indigenous companies coming up, and we're getting into that space. So for everything we do, and I use that also in the concept of a difference between economic growth and economic development. For a company to be development, there must be indigenization of whatever you're bringing into that space. Not just importing. You have to make sure there's local production. You have to make sure there's local generation of value. So it's really, really very, very important that people have an appreciation beyond the spiritual aspect of it. The philosophical aspect of the Yoruba religion is also very important. Thank you very much. That's just my little contribution. Eshe?
That was my little contribution. That was a very good contribution, very big one. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. Really appreciate it. All right. We're going to move on to the anthems now. I'm trying not to say anything on what he said because it was good. Like, what's a perfect bear? Let me just play the anthems before we start another session. Trying to connect. 1 second, please. Matrishan, I brought you up earlier. Maybe it was a network. All right, please, let's make it quick, please. Matrishan, please go on. Ẹkáàbọ.
Yeah, very quickly. Just like we mentioned our fathers and who have been our heroes, Shango, Obatala, the likes. I also think that in the context of what Mama has said or has espoused, I feel that it will be incumbent upon us to do similar for our recent heroes who have domesticated Yoruba wisdom and embrace other things to it. Vis-a-vis, we've already mentioned earlier today, Reverend Emmanuel Lijadu and the likes. Because if people know that, I've never heard of this gentleman until last year. And I consider myself to be widely read, but I've never heard about him. So there are many of us like that we don't even know our fathers and what they have done. So I feel that if we can create a series of sessions where we look at our heroes in this space, what they have done, how they have embraced, for example, Christianity and learned Ifa and stuff like that, and relate with it properly as it should, in a holistic way. I think that also will help a lot of our people to begin to have balance in their perspective and their relationship with their Yoruba culture in its wholesomeness. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that. These are people who got so serious with Christianity, the kind of things that with their Yorubaness, while still holding on to their Christianity, the kind of things they did. He was a Baptist minister, but the way they Africanized Yoruba, it got to the point where if you want to name your child, there has to be a Yoruba name. They did marvelous things, right? But we're gonna have such sessions. Thank you, and we're gonna have sessions like that where we'll learn about folks like that, and hopefully that will also help us to appreciate them and build on the foundation they've laid. Thank you very much, Maltuition, for that fantastic point. Thanks a lot. We'll have those sessions like Barolong. Okay, it's time to go home now. So here's Nigerian anthem, and then we'll play the Yoruba anthem. I'll see you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. if your time is African time. Please, let's come early, and we'll have a great time together. And those things you talked about, the ideas and the suggestions, I will work on them, and very soon we will have those sessions. Thank you very much. Okay. Here's Nigerian anthem. Please sing along, and after this I'll play the Yoruba anthem. Enjoy.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be our symbol that truth and justice reign. In peace all battle honored, and this we count as gain. To hand unto our children a banner without stain. Oh God of all creation, grant this our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed. And so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed. Nigeria may be Iṣẹ́ wa fúnlẹ̀ wá, fún ilẹ̀-èdè wa. Tàgbéga, tàgbéga, tàgbéga fáyé rí. Ìgbàgbọ́ wa ni pé láti bẹ̀rù làbọ̀ mọ́. Ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká jọlá. Ìṣọ̀kan àtòmìnira ni ẹ jẹ́ ká máa lépa. Tẹ̀síwájú fọ̀pọ̀ ire àtòhun tó dára. Ọmọ ògbàlódé bọ́ sípò ẹ̀tọ́ rẹ̀. Ìwọ ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ gbogbo adúláwọ̀.
Àwa ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀, ìmọ́lẹ̀ wo ni wọ́kùn lágbára Ọlọ́run, ilẹ̀ Ìgbò ní bàjẹ́, Nàìjíríà náà ní bàjẹ́. Thank you very much for being part of today's session. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless your family. May God bless Nigeria. May God bless Yoruba land. Do have a lovely, lovely evening. I'll see you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Different time, West African time. Odaro. Eshe.